everybody. Welcome back to Fun Facts with Faith. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different. I don't have a discrete fun fact for you today. I have a little bit more of a fun historical story, but I think it'll be interesting, so just bear with me. I want to talk to you today about a building called the Citicorp Center. It was later renamed the Citigroup Center, and now it's called 601 Lexington Avenue. It's a very distinctive building. You can recognize it in the New York City skyline because it has a 45-degree slanted top. Very technical architectural diagrams we have there. But actually the top is not the most architecturally interesting part of the building. That would actually be the bottom, which is on stilts. Yes, they built a skyscraper on stilts. And this design was the brainchild of Chief Structural Engineer William Le Mesurier, I think. I don't speak French, but I think that's his name. And it was done to accommodate the Church of St. Peter's, which was on the same lot that this building was going to be built at. And so what the Chief Structural Engineer did was he put the bottom 9 stories of the building on stilts, and the stilts are in the center of each wall instead of at the corners, and this was done to accommodate the church building. But what this meant was that it was a lot less stable. So he designed this chevron bracing structure, again, very technical diagram, which to sort of offset that, but that made the building very light, and so it was prone to swaying in the wind. And so he included a tuned mass damper to offset that. And so everything was wonderful and everything was great and the building was not going to fall over. And then in 1978, he got a phone call. Okay, so mini architecture lesson. I apologize to any architects out there. I'm not an architect. But normally a building is most vulnerable to perpendicular winds, so winds that strike the face. Here's a slightly more technically advanced diagram. So here's the Citicorp building. These little black things are the locations of the stilts. So normally buildings are most vulnerable to these guys, the perpendicular winds that strike on the face. But because of the design of this building, Citicorp Center was actually more vulnerable to quartering winds, or winds that strike at the corners. So in 1978, Le Mesurier gets this phone call. The phone call is from an undergraduate architecture student who was studying Citicorp Center as part of her thesis, and she discovered that the building was particularly prone to quartering winds and was very concerned about this, and so she reached out. And so he checked the math, and indeed, the building was very prone to these winds, and furthermore, when he compared this against weather data in New York, he found that there was a storm that hit New York strong enough to topple the building every 55 years. And if, for example, in a blackout, the mass damper were to stop working, then a storm of strong enough wind to knock the building over would hit New York every 16 years. Okay, so this is not great. And to make things even worse, at this point, there is a hurricane on its way up the eastern seaboard. That would be Hurricane Ella. So in summary, we've got a building on stilts, very prone to wind, and there's a big old storm heading towards New York. So what are we going to do? What they did was coordinated with the NYPD to work out a evacuation plan for everybody in a 10-block radius if necessary. They had 2,500 Red Cross volunteers on standby. They had 3 weather services monitoring the winds 24/7, and they did emergency repairs all through the night and had it all done by the time everybody came back to work in the morning, which is just amazing to me that you could repair an entire building that quickly. And in fact, Hurricane Ella never actually made landfall, and so nobody knew about this situation and what had almost happened until sometime at a party, a writer for the New Yorker heard Le Mesurier telling the story, and so he published it in the New Yorker, and then there was a BBC special that aired on it. That undergrad, remember, the one who discovered that the building was prone to, vulnerable to quartering winds and called and set this all in motion, her name was Diane Hartley. And And so today's fun fact is that it's thanks to Diane Hartley that the Citicorp building is still standing. The end. Thanks for watching, and I'll have another fun fact for you tomorrow.